Hello and welcome back to Rose Connections. I'm Janet Rose, and today is a relationship reboot day. Yay! I love these days. Relationship reboot is sort of where my passion for heart-centered leadership really started, because very much at its core, relationship reboot is about really breaking apart these default assumptions that we have about relationships, these default goals that are provided for us by society or by media or by our families. And it's about really breaking those apart and transforming our relationships so that we show up more authentically. We feel safer to be more authentic in our relationships, and we create more safety for others to show up authentically in relationship with us. And so with relationship reboot, I'm usually talking really big picture, macro level relationships in terms of, our relationships with one another as human beings. But today, let's just drill down into one of the specific types of relationships. Let's just talk about romantic relationships today. It's all about love, and I had meant to do this topic in February, but as we have talked about before, I've suffered some loss. So, it's coming out today. This is what really wants to be said today. And it's about getting out of relationship default mode. Okay. I don't know how you all feel about this, but I have noticed over the years, especially now that I've been married for almost 19 years, that there's a lot of expectations that we put on romantic couples of all kinds. Whether you're at the beginning of your relationship, whether you have been together 20 years like I have, there's all these sort of expectations of pleasing society that we get drawn into because it's become so normalized for us. And what I really want us to do when I talk about getting out of relationship default mode is really examining what we really want in our relationships with other people and making our relationships reflective of that. I firmly believe if you look at some of the other relationship reboot videos, including I think probably the first one I did about many forms of love, you'll see that I have this theme of relationships are about the dynamics, the specific dynamics of the people that are in it. It's a specific blend of who you two are, the synergy of who you two are as individuals. So let's just go with romantic relationships, because very much I think I see a lot of people kind of blending into one another in their romantic relationships, but they're still playing out a lot of these default relationship norms. So let's just look at cheating, for example. My husband and I, when we first got engaged, I was still a devout Catholic. I was all on board with the Catholicism. And so we did marriage prep through the Catholic Church. And that marriage prep, included, couples counseling. It included a class, like a full day class, where we had to define our values as a family unit. But then it also included this quiz that we had to do, this like 200 questions, rate from 1 to 5 how much you agree with the following statements. And so there were some simple like ones about finances, for example, like assessing financial compatibility. When I have extra money, I prefer to put it in savings, 1 to 5. And then later on, there might be a statement, when I have extra money, I want to treat myself to something nice, 1 to 5. And so it's rating those various values that go into pretty much anything that a couple can face. And I think it included some questions about end of life. It included some questions about if my spouse was caught doing something illegal, this is what I would do. And then there were the questions about cheating. And those were the ones that really stuck with me and intrigued me because, like, literally the second question was, I consider having sex with someone else to be cheating. That's pretty non-controversial for most people. Most people would agree with that statement on some level, I think. But then later on, like maybe 8 questions later, there was another one that said, I consider kissing someone else to be cheating. I consider looking at someone else to be cheating. And like there's at least like 7 questions in there that had various definitions of cheating. And so when my husband and I debriefed after that, I realized that, what the nice part was is I wasn't answering as to what the church wanted me to answer, but I was answering about what actually mattered to me, what was actually important to me in defining my own relationship. And so that opened up a really wonderful conversation between my husband and I where we decided where we agree the line needs to be drawn as to what is cheating and what's not cheating. And that was actually super relevant for me at the time because I was friends with all of my exes. And I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of them today. And so it was important for me to still have these people in my life who mattered to me, who were witnesses to who I have become, and who still cheerlead that. They're still deep friends of mine today. And so what was wonderful about that is we could open up this conversation and get out of that relationship default mode where we make presumptions as to what cheating is. And so in a lot of ways, me understanding where I need to draw the line in my relationship with him helps me better understand myself. It helps me better understand the world around me. And when we decided to become polyamorous, it helped me navigate those relationships too. And so that process of breaking apart those defaults that are provided for us, it's the basic set. It's the basic relationship starter set, right? Everyone has a ring, and oh well, unless you're of a certain generation, then maybe only one person has a ring, or a certain tradition. We are hefted all of these expectations by media, by our families, by society at large. But in the end, every relationship is just about the people who are in it. And so they get to decide what they do. And so just like we don't dictate who in your family must be the one responsible for doing the laundry, you all get to decide that for yourselves. Something as simple as how you allocate household chores is a reflection of who you two are as a unit, as a combined force and partnership. And so, for example, my husband and I both struggle with depression and anxiety. And so we have built in structures within our relationship that allow us to have some bad days where maybe the dishes don't get done today. And that helps me be the best me I can be so that I don't have to feel like I'm constantly obligated and forcing myself to spend energy I don't even have. And same thing for him. And so we have developed a synergy over the years where we can balance that and adapt to where each other, where we are. And I can say, coming from a mediation background, so many of the relationships that I mediated, so many of the divorces or the co-parenting situations, would have been resolved had these conversations happened earlier in the relationship rather than after things had already broken apart. Knowing where you each stand on things. For example, children, raising children. What values do you want to raise them with? What holiday traditions do you want to create? And every time that we choose our own adventure with our relationships, And we choose to adventure with that person past breaking through those relationship norms, creating our own structures, deciding who we really want to be. When we do that, we are far more successful. We are going to be able to bounce back from conflict much more easily because we will have built this recognition of the authenticity with which we are creating this agreement together. Sadly, when I was a mediator, some of the things that I would see is, something breaking apart because of cheating. And it was because they never had that conversation that my husband and I had about what cheating actually means to them. So on the one hand, we have, this one person who views, if you even look at someone else, then that's cheating to me, and you're going to really wound me if you even look at somebody else. And he had grown up in a household that had kind of normalized cheating on some level. His dad was very openly cheating on his mom. And so for him, it's like, well, as long as I'm not having sex with anyone else behind your back, then, I don't understand what the problem is. And so even in that situation, they had been married for 5 years and they never once had this conversation. So when he, has, he kissed someone when he was drunk, she completely, came unraveled at that because they had never decided to come to an agreement as to what that meant. They both just assumed that they knew that the other person knew what they meant. So we need to find those pockets of assumption because that's where relationship default really, that's where it lives and breathes. And sometimes we need to rely on the default. We need to go back to kind of default mode, just like you have to reset your computer sometimes. You sometimes have to reset your relationship. But this is not about doing a factory reset. This is about really holistically customizing what it is that you really want, what it is that's truly a reflection of you, and what is truly a reflection of who you are together. Because you're still whole individual people. And I'll do another video on how, someone to complete me is not at all, that should not be a relationship goal. But we'll talk about that some other time because right now I just want you to understand that you are both actualized, self-actualized people. Whole, complete, complex, multifaceted, amazing people. And if you love each other, there's a lot of room in between where you can come together without losing who you really are. But you can't do that if you just assume that the other person knows you. We have to speak that out loud. We have to create our relationships by speaking them into life. Not just flowing with the moment and where it takes us, but actually starting to define who we really want to be and what's the structure that we want to house us. Ooh, look, I'm talking about tower stuff like I did in my last video, which is a good segue right now because, I could talk about this topic, relationship reboot and default mode, but the point is for us to be able to authentically show up in our relationships, we need to be able to define what an authentic relationship looks like for us. What is going to help us feel safe in that relationship to show up as we truly are? Or are we going to continue operating under stigmas and assumptions and the unspoken? So I brought up the tower because I am going to be doing a tower type video every single month. Next month, I'm actually going to go into a relationship reboot tower type of situation and what happens when it all comes crashing down. How do you rebuild it when you've had one of those relationship agreements that I'm encouraging you to make? What happens when one of those falls apart? And how do you pick up the pieces again? So that'll be next month's relationship reboot. And all of this is building up to, I am writing an ebook about this whole tower thing that I have talked about in the last video that I'm kind of just flirting with a little bit today. So I am writing an ebook that is hopefully going to come out this summer. And I am opening up more training slots for trauma-informed care training. So relationship reboot, that's sort of the relationship educator in me. But I also do a lot of work around building in relationship reboot with our coworkers, with our clients, with our families. So let's talk. If you want to bring me in to train about trauma-informed anything or relationship reboot, I am up for that. So please feel free to reach out to me, Janet, Janet, at rose-connections.com. So thank you again for joining, and thank you so much for sharing these videos, and the feedback I've been getting has been wonderful. Thank you again. Please click, subscribe, share, comment, like, all of those fun things, and I will see you again for a Radiant Resilience video next.